Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, I rise on behalf of the people of Dennery North to denounce and condemn the arbitrary extension of the state of emergency. And Mr. Speaker, I do so at a time when emotions are running high in the country. There is a restlessness in St. Lucia today as we speak. And this, I believe, is being fueled and motivated by the actions of the government. Mr. Speaker, we all have accepted and embraced the fact that the coronavirus, or COVID-19 as we call it, posed a serious threat, not just to St. Lucia, but to countries throughout the world. We all saw what happened in Europe, Italy to be specific. We saw what happened in New York and other countries in the world. And so when we came to this honorable house to discuss how as a country we were going to manage COVID-19, the opposition from very early, Mr. Speaker, was fully supportive of the actions of the government. We held back on occasions when we could have agitated for things to be done differently. But instead, Mr. Speaker, we gave the government a free rein. And what did we see? We saw a government acting in bad faith, abusing the power that was given to it. And we saw politics at play, Mr. Speaker, when opportunities and scenarios unfolded in ways when, Mr. Speaker, we could have worked harmoniously as two parties. Mr. Speaker, enough has been said in this honorable house about the distribution of NEMO packages. And I remember referring to it during the debate on the estimates, or elsewhere, Mr. Speaker, as a UWP operation at the offices of NEMO. Mr. Speaker, a state of emergency is absolutely necessary as a strategy to control the spread of the virus and to manage the country in a time of crisis. And it is a strategy that has been embraced, as I said, by countries throughout the world. But even when, Mr. Speaker, countries throughout the world decide to resort to a state of emergency to manage their affairs, they have been cautioned. Because throughout Europe and elsewhere where we've seen state of emergencies being resorted to, Mr. Speaker, there are documented evidence where the government has used its power in a way that is not fair and in a way to oppress the people. Mr. Speaker, a lockdown was necessary. The curfew was necessary. The zoning of the country was necessary. We may argue and we may debate about how those were implemented, but we will never fault the government for saying or thinking that the intentions were noble. But it is how you went about using what was supposed to have been noble intentions that we frown upon. And so, Mr. Speaker, we saw people griping. We saw St. Lucians expressing their frustrations with the government. And as I said in my preamble, St. Lucia today is in a state of restlessness. And it is beginning to manifest itself in very ugly ways in some geographic pockets of this country. And I am afraid, Mr. Speaker, that by extending the state of emergency from June 1st to the 30th of September, if we are not further agitating an already agitated population, we have to be extremely careful, Mr. Speaker, how we go about doing this. And I believe, notwithstanding that lengthy preamble by the Prime Minister, Mr. Speaker, I am convinced today that the extension of the state of emergency from the 1st of June to the 30th of September is wicked, it is ill-advised, it is oppressive, it is meant to stifle freedom of expression, it is an abuse of power, Mr. Speaker. It is meant to suppress the masses, and it is also a tool to clamp down on civil servants who are already agitated over salary considerations, Mr. Speaker. This state of emergency being extended by 4 months, and the Prime Minister was quick to tell this Honorable House this morning that he was taking his cue from regional counterparts. Mr. Speaker, subject to correction, St. Vincent and the Grenadines never saw the need to implement or institute a state of emergency. Trinidad and Tobago, with more cases, whether you look at it on just a head count or per capita, never saw the need for a state of emergency. And as I said, we are not against a state of emergency. But what justification can there be for 4 months? I believe, Mr. Speaker, that this state of emergency is meant to suppress certain organizations and people in this country, including the opposition. It will not be long or much longer before we go to the polls. It's not going to be long, Mr. Speaker. And in this state of emergency, the extension, this is designed to ensure that civil society organizations and opposition political parties do not get a platform on which to take their issues to the people. So he has all the power in the world, and he can extend as he wants, Mr. Speaker. But the people of St. Lucia, Mr. Speaker, the day will soon come when they will pronounce. The day will come when they will have to make a choice. This coronavirus situation is not about us. This is about the people of St. Lucia, Mr. Speaker. And I heard the Prime Minister in his preamble, and one of the justifications he sought to, or he attempted to provide, was that with that extended state of emergency, that would be the justification to have, and subject to correction, to have Cuban medical personnel on St. Lucian soil to help manage the situation in an already stretched and overburdened health system. Mr. Speaker, this government has an abusive tendency, and the pandemic is emboldening this government to flex state power over people who have genuine concerns, people who want to express themselves, their thoughts, their positions on matters of national development during a period of crisis. We were not opposed to the measures that the Prime Minister outlined when we first came to Cabinet, to Parliament, sorry, to discuss the COVID situation. And then he speaks about, and this is the psychology here, Mr. Speaker. He proceeded this morning to thank all the organizations and personnel whom he believed had helped his government manage the situation, including the opposition. But, Mr. Speaker, I have to ask the question this morning. Is the Prime Minister genuine and sincere in thanking the opposition? Does the Prime Minister really want to embrace all St. Lucians, irrespective of political persuasion? Does he really want to embrace everybody moving forward for the betterment of this country? You cannot talk about collaboration and inclusiveness to manage COVID when you have presided over $80 million of CDP allocations, and not one single opposition parliamentarian has been asked to preside over a drain or a wall or a project costing $10,000. But conveniently today, you come in here and you want to give expression to a theme, all in. It cannot be an all-in predicated on convenience. It's either you accept the crisis for what it is and see the need to have all hands on deck for the betterment of our country and for the good of our people. Don't treat the opposition with disdain today and tomorrow come here for the optics and talk about all in and make a case for inclusion. This is deceitful, Mr. Speaker. And the last time we met as a parliament, a particular member, he quoted every dictionary he knew just to ensure that the meaning of hypocrisy resonated in this house. Today, Mr. Speaker, I saw a hypocrite. I saw a hypocrite coming to thank the opposition and asking for the opposition to work with him. Of course, we have a moral responsibility and we will always work with the government, Mr. Speaker, because we understand that we are doing it for the people of this country. But it should never be born out of convenience. Mr. Speaker, with an extension from June 1st to the 30th of September, the emergency powers are being used to shield the government, or the government is using the emergency powers to shield itself from a frustrated population. The people of St. Lucia have been frustrated for 4 years. 4 years. They've seen misguided priorities. They've seen Mr. Speaker, they have seen endless wastage of resources. The priorities have not been right. And as I would have said at a previous sitting, COVID is not responsible for everything we are going through today. Instead, it has exacerbated the situation. And at the time, Mr. Speaker, when we are supposed to, and we have that responsibility, the 17 of us in here, it's a collective responsibility. It is not a responsibility that belongs only to the Prime Minister and his members of his cabinet. We all on this side represent people. We represent in excess of 37,000 people who voted for the St. Lucia Labour Party. But our ultimate responsibility is not to the people who voted for our party, but to every St. Lucian at home and abroad. And if you're going to put yourself up as a candidate to contest general elections, and you cannot understand the simple fact that your responsibility does not reside only to you and your constituents, you're not ready yet, Mr. Speaker. And that is why we're talking about, Mr. Speaker, a need for genuine inclusion. Let there be a mechanism where the opposition can contribute to this debate, the discourse. Gouvernement a venu a kai konsit jodi a. Ek la ni sa ou ka kriye state of emergency. Ko ou ka bay premier ministre la pouvoir pour sa faire un pile bagay, il pas de ça faire en circonstances qui normal. Et qui a dit nous dat commencer 1er juin pour aller juste 30 septembre nous ka ni ça en anglais nous ka crier a state of emergency. Et durant ça, Mr. Speaker, Premier ministre là ni power pour ça faire n'importe ça il veut. Puis loi ka bail qualité pouvoir ça dans state of emergency. Et nous on va ça ça dit bon matin. Nous quoi ça pas nécessaire. Nous quoi Premier ministre là qui fait ça pour ça contrôler à dans organisation en société. Nous quoi il a fait ça pour empêcher ce vote civil et puis notre monde dans pays qui fâché qui voulait aller en public et puis moucher au fâché, il a empêché de faire ça, puis il a contre loi si c'est monde ça aller faire gros meeting et puis bagaille comme ça. Nous aussi quoi notre élection par le Mr. Speaker. Et le Premier ministre là a servi l'occasion state of emergency ça pour empêcher l'organisation qu'on avait parti chain meeting et puis bagaille comme ça en préparation pour l'élection. Et c'est pour raison ça là nous avons venu ici à Audi et dit nous pas qu'à supporter extension of state of emergency. Mais nous aussi dit, Mr. Speaker, that l'affaire coronavirus là, c'est une qui a affecté ce policy appeal. Et nous avons dit, il n'y a pas de responsabilité du gouvernement seulement, et du Premier ministre et du cabinet seulement, mais de tous 17 membres du Parlement qui ici ont une responsabilité. Puisque nous avons représenté les gens comme nous, et nous tous avons représenté dans les façades là, à pipouer 35 000 personnes qui votaient par le parti nous en dernière élection. Et moi aussi faire point, Mr. Speaker. Dat pièce moun qui a mis des koy devant pour courir élection. Alors n'importe parti. Si moun ça pas comprendre, la responsabilité c'est pas ça Lyon et puis famille et puis constituency mais toute cette lycée moun ça pas parler. And that is what we have. Mr. Speaker, for us to objectively and seriously combat the situation that is before us, we need all hands on deck. That cannot be a matter only for politicians or parliamentarians. This is not a matter for the Prime Minister and his ministers only, Mr. Speaker. But they are people of goodwill. They are people with skills. They are competent people in St. Lucian society today who must be brought into the mix. But instead, Mr. Speaker, what do we see? And the pattern is clear. Once you have an opinion that is different, once you can muster and summon the courage to say, perhaps there is a different way, you are quick, Mr. Speaker, to be pushed beneath the guillotine. Whether you are from the clergy, you're from the opposition, you are a member of civil society organizations, it's as if you ought not to come out and express your opinion on things that you're passionate about. And if you don't believe me, Mr. Speaker, find the time to engage members of the St. Lucia National Trust. Ask the Archbishop, and there are a number of other persons you can ask. And so, Mr. Speaker, the St. Lucia Labour Party, or the parliamentary opposition, we are saying that we have serious misgivings with the extension of the state of emergency from June 1st to the 30th of September. This is an abuse of power. This is a government flexing its state muscles to shield itself. And this morning, we all saw it outside the Parliament chamber. The place was cordoned off, a government shielding itself from its people. And what better time for that election campaign to resonate from the other side? What was it? What was it? You pay. So pay. Panier pour pay. And the sad reality, Mr. Speaker, is that you expect some seasoned, tried and tested, very experienced members of the cabinet to whether silently or in other forms say that yes, we understand the whole principles of collective responsibility. But on this occasion, this is not right. On this occasion, this is not fair. But instead, Mr. Speaker, the eyes will have it. The eyes will have it. History will one day tell the next generation what some of us in this house stood for. History will tell the next generation or point out to the next generation those persons who stood up for St. Lucia when St. Lucia was asking its sons and daughters to stand up for it, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as I said in my preamble, on behalf of the people of Olio, the people of Despin, the people of Richford, Lapel, Gadet, Denny Riviere, Grand Ravine, La Ressource, and Belmont, I want, on their behalf, Mr. Speaker, to state emphatically that I am opposed, I am denouncing, and I am condemning the extension of the state of emergency from June 1st to the 30th of September. With this short presentation, Mr. Speaker, that is my contribution to the debate on this particular motion.